Hello. Hello. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to our Breaking Through Live today. Are you busy, but not really getting anywhere? Do you ever feel like you are working hard, but not seeing the results you truly want? If so, you are in the right place. Welcome to your Breaking Through community. I'm Marian Amwa, author, coach, and host of our Breaking Through Conversations. This is a space where we share real stories, practical tools, and strategies to help you thrive at work and in life. Today's guest is someone whose work has transformed how governments, nonprofits, businesses, and communities all over the world measure success and create impact. Mark Friedman, the creator of results-based accountability, will share his personal journey, insights, and practical tools you can use to get clarity, focus, and real results that last. In one of my earlier videos, Busy But Not Going Anywhere, I referenced Mark's groundbreaking book, Trying Hard is Not Good Enough. His work has been a huge influence on my personal journey, and it is an honor to have him here with us today. Welcome, everyone. Tell us where you are watching us from, and you know the drill. But if you don't, and today is your very first time, thank you so much for joining us. One of the things we want you to do is tell us where you are joining us from today, and then welcome Mark with me. And so get ready. This conversation is really about clarity, accountability, and achieving results that matter. Mark, welcome and thank you for joining us. And let me say that today, I want to honor you and say thank you. Thank you. So let's get into it. Welcome. You can introduce yourself, your journey, passions, and how you came about creating results-based accountability.
Okay. Well, thank you, Marian, for having me today. And you and I go back a long way. I've always valued our relationship and our working together. Um, and so it's nice to see you now in this new role. Um, my my journey started with me working in government for 20 years. The first year of that was as a high school math teacher. And so you don't get any closer to the front lines than being a math teacher in high school. Um, but I only managed to survive 1 year of that. And then I went on to work for the Maryland Department of Human Services. And I was with them for 19 years. And I worked my way up to be Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation and also the department's Chief Financial Officer. So I learned a lot about how government works and how government doesn't work. And I left, and so in the course of that, I experienced all of the nonsense that's been imposed on government workers over the years. These are methods that people dreamed up in some academic setting that aren't practical in any way. They were always methods like zero-based budgeting or management by objectives, just go right down the list. We tried all of them, and they were all a waste of time. And so I came out of my work in government with some sort of anger about that. And I went on to work in Washington, D.C. with a policy center known as the Center for the Study of Social Policy. And they were a major contractor from the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And so they supported my work there. And I got to work then with nonprofits all around the United States. And I discovered that the nonprofits were just as burdened with these useless processes as we were when I was back in government. I would go to these meetings once a month, and the agenda of the entire meeting was for people to go around the table and say what they did since the last meeting. And there was no sense of progress. There was no sense of purpose really in any measurable way. And so nothing came of all of this effort that people were putting into these processes. And so I decided I was going to start to try and figure out a better, simpler way to do this work that actually got us somewhere. And that was the genesis of results-based accountability. And what the principles are of this method are simple, common sense, plain language, minimum paper, and most importantly of all, useful. useful in making a difference in the lives of people and in the lives of communities. And so I've been very fortunate in having that work widely successful and people widely interested in it. In the course of the last 30 years now that I've been doing this work, I've spoken in all but two of the US states and 15 countries around the world. And other people in other countries are using this that I've never been to before, which is fine too. Um, and we just reached 82,000 books sold of Trying Hard is Not Good Enough. And I've tried to research what that means, and apparently that's a pretty good number. Um, so that's the genesis of RBA. Um, I'm not sure exactly more to say about it without getting into the kind of nuts and bolts
Yes,
to it.
we'll get into the nitty-gritty, but thank you. You were a math teacher. Wow, who lasted only a year. You were a math teacher. Okay. So, Mark, you saw a need and you responded to that need with results-based accountability. And sometimes it's called outcomes-based accountability.
Right.
And then, of course, you didn't write the books right away, right?
No, I did the work for 10 years before I wrote the book. Uh,
Okay. So for those of you, we will come to exactly those of you who don't know, this is Mark's book. I mean, this was the DVD player, and this is Mark's book, Trying Hard is Not Good Enough. Sorry, and I have the old edition, and I have this one, Training Curve. So I consume Mark's work, and I still do. Now, I think you've answered the question about what inspired you to develop it. There was a need. People were wasting resources, but were not going anywhere. Busy, but not going anywhere. Trying hard is not good enough. So maybe you can touch a little bit on the title. Why the title, Trying Hard is Not Good Enough, and then we'll go into what exactly is results-based accountability.
well, I've had some people react negatively to the title. One guy says it reminded him too much of what his father used to tell him. So it got kind of personal there. But mostly people haven't argued with me about it. And my intention was to have it so that you didn't have to read the book, you just had to read the title. Okay, the message is in the title. Um, and it's not a conventional title, but I think it does the job.
Okay. So, what exactly is not a conventional, but I like it. Like I said in my video like a month ago, busy but not going anywhere. And I realized that I needed to get back to applying some of the concepts in the book. So, to the question, what exactly is results-based accountability?
Okay.
I know
Let's
it
see.
can be technical, but break it down for my viewers.
Yeah, no. I understand, and I'll do the best I can. But um, results-based accountability starts with a fundamental distinction that's kind of been lost in the work over many decades now, and it's the difference between what we call population accountability versus performance accountability. Population accountability is about the quality of life of people in a geographic area. Um, and it could be whole populations or subpopulations. So we could be talking about the well-being of all people in Philadelphia, or all children in Philadelphia, or all persons with disabilities in Philadelphia. Any population that you can define, we can begin to talk about the quality of life those people aspire to and need. And and to do that in plain language. And I pulled out with me one of my favorite lists of quality of life ambitions, which we call population results. And this comes from the city of Cardiff in Wales. And they say people in Cardiff are healthy. Cardiff has a clean, attractive, and sustainable environment. People in Cardiff are safe and feel safe. Cardiff has a thriving and prosperous economy. People in Cardiff achieve their full potential. Cardiff is a great place to live, work, and play, and Cardiff has a fair, just, and inclusive society. And you can see that in those statements, those are aspirations. Those are things that we crave, that we hope to achieve someday in a substantive way. But this level of thinking about this was completely absent from the work when I was involved in it, we were all in the weeds. We were all talking about programs and projects and this, that, and the other thing. And we lost sight of what the true purpose of the work is, which is this kind of statement of well-being for people uh, in countries, cities, counties, states, and globally for that matter. Um, Different places have articulated different versions of this. But one of the things that this does immediately is it makes clear that this isn't just about government. Government can't deliver these quality of life conditions. The only way for this to change is for government at different levels to be partners with the nonprofit community and with the people of the community. And it's only through partnership that you can make a difference in health. There's a long-standing misunderstanding that if you talk about all people being healthy, that's the job of the health department. And that's just not right. The health department by itself can't do it even if it wanted to. The health department in any given place is only one part of the puzzle, and that they need to engage in people in the medical community. They need to engage the people in the community itself. And and engagement in this case means not just swearing allegiance to healthy people, but it means identifying the measures that tell us whether we have healthy people or not. There's a ton of data out there, but what are the most important measures that we need to care about? The rates of heart disease, the rates of diabetes, the rates of cancer. Um, those kinds of measures tell us whether people are healthy or not, and we have the data. So let's winnow that down to the most important, say 10 measures. And now here's the really important part. Take that data and put it on a graph that enables you to create a baseline. So what's the history of juvenile diabetes in our community? What does that look like? And now here's the other important part. Where is that line headed if we don't do something more or different than what we're doing now? So you create a visual that everybody can understand. Most places that deal with data are terrible at communicating that with the community because there's page after page of tables and all this sort of stuff. If you can reduce what you care about to a graph with history and forecast, everybody can look at that graph and see if things are getting better or worse. It doesn't take a degree in mathematics to do that. It's common sense. And so if you can create those kinds of graphs with history and forecast around, say, the 10 most important measures of people's health, then you can go into the thinking process in RBA. And the first part of that thinking process is what's the story behind that graph? Why is juvenile diabetes getting worse? What are the causes? What are the forces at work? And then you can think about, okay, who are the partners that have a role to play? Because it's not just the health department. And we can begin to see that it's the food industry. We can see it's the schools have a role to play in this, in the education system, that there are many, many players that have a role to play if we want to make a difference in those kinds of measures. And so you can bring those people together. And then the next question which you wrestle with is, okay, what works? What could work to turn that curve away from the trajectory that we're on now to make things better? And that's the definition of success in RBA. It's not point to point improvement. It's here today and it'll be better tomorrow. If you have a trajectory that's going in the wrong direction, sometimes success is just slowing the rate at which things are getting worse. And so turning the curve is the idea of turning away from the baseline into the right direction for progress. And and so we can begin to think about what works to do that. Now, there's a lot of research on these problems, and there's a lot of research material that gives us insight into what kinds of actions and programs we can take. And that's all good. We should study that and see what of that research applies to our community. But the other thing we have to remember is it's not always about money. There are a lot of no cost and low cost things that we can do. What if we got the churches to hold a meeting once a month on juvenile diabetes? Doesn't cost much, and we could actually begin to engage the community in a way that's not possible through formal government organizations. So the idea of a partnership, the idea of articulating quality of life in clear terms, of talking about the measures in terms of baselines, and then the story and the partners and what works. And then finally, the most important step is the action plan. Okay, given all of that, what are we actually going to do? And if you then go ahead and take action, then you periodically go back through this whole thinking process again. It's not once, but you go back and you look at the graph again and you think about causes again and you think about partners that you need to engage that aren't at the table and you study what works and try out new ideas and you check the numbers again. And it's a continuous process. And if you do that, as many people have done, you will actually see those numbers get better. And that's the test of whether we're making progress on these important conditions in our society. Are the most important measures of those conditions getting better? And that's what RBA is about.
My goodness. Can we clap for Mark? I've heard you talk about RBA in countless places, but you have really made it so simple. It feels like, you know what they say about wine? Wine gets as wine matures, it becomes sweeter and sweeter. And thank you so much. This is very, very clear. Talked about partnerships. You cannot do it alone. The visuals, and these days people are talking about vision boards. Where do you want the organization or the project or the personal ambition dream you want? Visualize it, talking about the story behind what has been happening before. Data, right? Looking at it is not you put it there, or even a vision board, you put it there once and you never look at it again. No, you put it there and you're always looking at it. What works, right? It's great to have a vision, but what works? Who are the partners you need to bring on board? Turn the curve. It's not point to point. I'm learning a lot. And then it's not all about money. It's not all about money. There are things that you can do without money. You can partner with others without money, have an action plan, what works. And thank you. Continuous improvement, continuously looking at it so that you are turning the curve in the right way.
Right.
Please, if you have a question, put it in. If you watch this replay later, by all means, put a comment in. And if you have a burning question that is not answered today, I will get back to Mark and he will answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me
Go
say
ahead.
one more thing, Marion.
Mhm.
Because most processes you have to go to college and get a degree to understand, and then that's not true here. RBA is every person's process. Everybody can understand this. And in fact, you can go through that whole thinking process from the baseline to story to partners to what works to the beginnings of an action plan. You can do that in 1 hour. You don't need to go to college for a semester to study this stuff. And we have in the back of Trying Hard is Not Good Enough, there are what we call turn the curve exercises. And there's one at the population level, which we've been talking about so far, and there's another one at the performance level, which I haven't yet talked about. But you can do those without any prior training at all. It's all common sense, and you can actually get to the beginnings of an action plan in 1 hour.
Wow. Action plan in 1 hour. That would be amazing. Fantastic, Mark. You have broken this down, and I know that when I go back to listen to it, I'll be able to tease in more of the concepts within it. Okay. Now, how can RBA, the framework, be applied in professional settings? And I think you've touched on it some. You can continue to elaborate in governments, nonprofits, private businesses. We have a number of our community members who have their own businesses, are beginning to start businesses or are thinking of businesses or have businesses, right? I was talking to one of my friends and she was like, I need to put things together, more organized. So can you speak to that? Businesses first, enterprises, and then we'll go to the personal level.
Sure, sure, absolutely. And I haven't talked yet about performance accountability, which we need to sort of circle back to. But I have my own business. I tell the name of my business is the Fiscal Policy Studies Institute. And I picked that fancy name because it's easier to get grants from foundations if you have a fancy name. Um, but then I tell people it's just me. It's a one-person company, and I've had that for 30 years. But I know what it means to run a business, which I had not had prior experience with. Um, and the bottom line answer to your question, Marion, is this: if you have a number that you want to make better,
Mhm.
RBA can help you make that number better. So it doesn't matter if the number is rates of juvenile diabetes or if the rates are the profit margins in your company and sales in your company. Any number in the private sector can be treated in the same way. I actually have worked with a couple of private sector organizations where they had some particular concern. One of them was an insurance company that was struggling with the rate of claims in, that they had to deal with, and how do they manage that? But if you can pick any number and put it on a graph that I described, history and forecast, and go through the thinking process, story, partners, what works, action plan, then you can make that number better, whether it's in government or nonprofits or for-profit corporations or in your personal life.
Mm. Wow. Okay. So think about a number. If you have a business, you want to start a business, think about a number. So for instance, if I want to grow my writing business, I want to write a book is a dream. The number is the book that I want to write, right? And I put everything in place. I want this book to be done by December 31, 2026. That is the big vision, right? What do I need to do? A, B, C, D. Have I, what is the story behind, right? Who are the partners? What are the resources? What works? What has worked in the past if I've done? Okay, so that explains it. If you want some more information, please, by all means, you can get Mark's book. He's really not here to sell books, but this book is a must-have. Private business, government businesses, nonprofit. Trying hard is not good enough. And the companion book is Turning Curves. Okay, great, Mark. Now let's get to the personal piece. But before we get to the personal piece, once again, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you to those who will be watching the replay. I invite you to join our Breaking Through community. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, we encourage you to do so. Press like us and press the notification button so that you know when we upload videos and when we have our live shows. Mark, you've talked about how it can be used in professional settings. Can you talk about how we can use RBA in our everyday life?
Yes, I
Some of
can.
the practical benefits you have seen personally.
I have a almost funny personal story about this. I had heart surgery, bypass surgery in 1998, and before that, I wasn't eating in any healthy way or not. It involved a lot of fast food and so forth. And so I created my own problem there, and I survived that surgery, thank goodness. And then what happened was I went back to my old ways of eating again, after the surgery. You would think I would have learned a lesson there, but I didn't. And my weight went up, you know, basically 15 or 20 pounds over what I was accustomed to. And I looked in the mirror one day and I said, this is not okay. And it occurred to me that, listen, I'm teaching other people how to use data to improve things. Why don't I try that with my own weight as a project? And I did. And I brought my weight down 15 pounds in the course of really a couple of years. It took a couple of years to get all the way back to where I was. Um, but it was the same thinking. What's the story? Who are the partners? What works? What's my action plan? Um, and after that, I ended up writing another book. And it's called Results-Based Dieting. And
Results-based dieting.
not too many people know about this book because I don't spend any time promoting it. But it's the story that I just told you, and it gives you hints and ideas about how to organize your own plan if you want to lose weight, or truthfully, any other medical condition you have could be addressed in the same kind of way. And it also has a lot of humor in it. I'm a big fan of humor. And if you read any of my books, Trying Hard or the others, I have humor sprinkled throughout. Um, One of the things this does is it separates my writing from academic writing. You know, I'm not an academic. I have a lowly bachelor's degree in mathematics. Um, and academia have these strictures about how you can talk about things and how you say things. And I'm very much outside of that world. And I'm trying to write for everyday people, and humor is enormously important. So it's included in all of the books that I've written.
Yeah. And I will tell you that I use the RBA principle when I'm even going shopping. So At the end of Saturday, when I'm doing most of my cooking, I ask myself, what do I need to cook? Once I know what I need to cook, make my list. You check to see what is in the pantry so that you're not buying, and I know some of you can identify with that. You're not going to the store to buy things that you already have, right? And at the end of the day, you sit back to see, did you achieve what you set out to do? Do you want to circle back to talk about performance accountability? And I want you to also talk about the thinking process, how to use the leaky roof, the example for people, because I'm sure if we're to ask in the chat, have you ever had a leaky roof before? Or do you know okay, let's say, yeah, we're asking for a friend. Do you know someone who's had a leaky roof before? If you can go through that example with us, that would be great.
Sure, sure. We'll come back to performance accountability in a
Okay,
minute.
sure.
Um, the leaking roof story comes from when I did some work in Tucson, Arizona, and it occurred to me that you could use this method, RBA thinking method, to solve a problem of a leaking roof. But I was in Tucson, Arizona. It doesn't rain a lot there. And so I wasn't sure it was going to work. But I asked the audience, how many people here have ever had a leaking roof? And a majority of hands went up. Of course, then I asked how many people currently have a leaking roof, and people laugh about that. And I said, we'll take up a collection for you later. But the idea that you could conceivably apply this to a leaking roof was a novel idea, and it was down to earth, and it connected to people's everyday experience. So I said, let's create a graph about the leak in our roof, you know? And what we're going to do is we're going to put a bucket out and we're going to measure the inches of water in the bucket after each rainstorm. So we start with rainstorm one and we put that on the graph, and then rainstorm two and rainstorm three. And it seems like the leak is getting worse because the line is going up. And then we can ask ourselves, where's that line headed if we don't do something about the roof? That's the forecast. So now we have a graph that has history and forecast, where we've been and where we're headed. And we begin to think about success being turning that curve down to zero. So we have 0 inches of water in the bucket after each rainstorm. So that's the leaking roof setup. And then I can say, okay, what's the story behind this leaking roof? And you got to get up on the roof and you got to find the leak. And then you can think about who are the partners that have a role to play. Well, it's going to be the hardware store and your brother with a ladder and a number of other people who can help with the repair process or and so forth. And then what are you actually going to do? And the actually going to do part is to get back up there, having found the leak, patch it up, and that's not the end of the story, because then you have to test it. What happens in the next rainstorm? If you're still getting water in the bucket, then the roof is not fixed. And so you have to go back through the process again. What's the story? Who are the partners? What works? What's our action plan? Maybe there were two leaks up there and you only found one of them. And so you keep doing this until you turn the curve and there's no more water in the bucket after the rainstorm. That's the thinking process in RBA. And the only difference is instead of a water in the bucket graph, we have a rate of juvenile diabetes, or we have a rate of corporate profits, or we have a rate of personal health, weight. It doesn't matter what the graph is, the thinking process is the same. Story, partners, what works, action plan.
Well, I never knew that the leaky roof example was novel. I didn't know. I didn't know that you created, that exercise, but that is a great exercise. And if you have a leaky roof, you can read the story and learn the processes. And it's the same thinking process that Mark expresses in the RBA concept. Okay, that is great. So, Mark, do you want to share a little bit about the performance accountability side of RBA in very layman's terms?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. I started off by saying RBA has two parts to it. It has population accountability and performance accountability. So when we started off talking about public health and people being healthy, and that's about population quality of life in a community, a city, a county, state, or a nation. But most of our jobs are in organizations, and we have something to do with the performance of those organizations. And most organizations have measures that tell how well the organization is performing. This is most obvious, of course, in the private sector where we look at rates of sales, and we look at profit um, and growth and equity. But in the government sector, we also have measures that tell us whether the programs that we have are working or not. And and so there's a way of thinking about performance measures that identify what are the most important performance measures. One of the things I've done in RBA, which is one of the more kind of groundbreaking things in a way, if you've done any work in the government or nonprofit sector and you think about performance measures, you will have a list that goes on for page after page after page. And there'll be all kinds of jargon used to describe the performance measures that are just incomprehensible and useless. I discovered in the course of doing this work that all performance measures for a program or agency actually fit into one of three categories. How much did we do? How well did we do it? And is anyone better off? And those are the three performance measurement categories in RBA. And they actually account for all performance measures in the history of the universe, fit into one of those three categories. So all of a sudden, we can start to talk about performance in language that people understand, that the legislature understands, that the elected officials understand, that people in our community understand. How much did you do? How well did you do it? Is anyone better off? You can sort your performance measures into those categories. And then we have a method at the back of trying hard is not good enough that within 1 hour, you can populate that picture and pick the 3 to 5 most important measures. And those are the measures then that you pick to create baselines and work on turning the curve.
Wow. Great, great. Okay, Mark, I don't know whether you would like to share your age, but thank
I
you
don't
so
care.
much. I have known Mark for since 2007. So that's what, 12, 13. Oh, no, 2007, that's 18 years, almost 18 years. That's
Yeah.
a very long time. And like I said at the beginning, thank you so much because my career is where it is, partly because of you. So thank you. So, Mark, now that you can share your age when you get to answer this question.
76, just cut to
Oh, Mark is 76. Thank you. Thank you for how you've impacted us and impacted the world and the spheres that you worked in. So, reflecting on your semi-retirement, what advice would you give to your younger self, and what message would you like to give listeners worldwide?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that question. uh, the journey that I've been on was not designed in advance. It was very much a learning process as we went along. Um, I think the most important lesson in all of this has to do with values. What's important to you as a person? Um, and I'm not shy about saying that I'm liberal. I have progressive values about the quality of life of people, treating people equally, um, addressing social injustice in all its various forms. I mean, those are values that I've held for quite a long time, learned from my parents as a child, and carry them through. And so RBA, in a certain sense, became a way of operationalizing uh, those values, of operationalizing, working on those values. So if you really care about health, then one of the things you're going to look at is health inequities and the lack of health insurance that people have, and a whole range of other dimensions to health. Um, Interestingly enough, RBA has been picked up in the health sector more than other parts of government and nonprofit sectors. The state of North Carolina has adopted RBA for the state department and in all 100 local health departments. And they're all using this method to address their local version of what health challenges are, and then how that adds up to a statewide version. And there's many other examples where the health sector um, has adopted RBA because it fits, partly because it's actually nothing more than old public health planning. You know, public health has a long history going back into the 19th century, which is fascinating in its own right. But it was all about public health. It was all about population health, the way I'm talking about it. And in the course of creating these huge structures and infrastructure in the health system, they lost sight of the fact that there's a difference between population and performance. Um, and so what RBA does is it takes health people and it reconnects them to their past, reconnects them to the past of what public health was from the very beginning in the 19th century. And it enables them to re-energize the efforts that they're putting into public health and to keep that separate from the business of running the health system. Because those are two different things. Running the health system is about performance accountability, but improving community health, that's about population accountability, and that's about everybody.
Wow. I really like how you connect your purpose, your value to the work that you've done. And when you think about it, as I'm thinking about it now, RBA is really about ensuring that people have a better quality of life,
Yes.
improving your life, making impact, but doing it in such a way that you're not just running around and thinking that you're running around means something, but seeing actual results. And I have used it. We have used it in the past when I worked at Casey Foundation. I still use it. We always start with what results are you trying to achieve? And then you begin to work your way backwards, thinking about what works, the partners, low cost, no cost ways of doing stuff. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for doing this. What message would you like to share with our audience?
Um, well, just to have an open mind about this. We've all gone through whatever degree you got in college or whatever your personal experiences are. We all have bring to this kind of work our prejudices and our frustrations, and there's a certain sense of that nothing works. I mean, there's a cynicism that comes when you work in government for a long time. Sometimes nothing works. It doesn't matter which system we try or pick or do, nothing works. And if you just kind of regain your optimism a little bit about this and open your mind to some of these new ways of working together, you can say that there are ways of doing this that actually do work, that actually makes a difference in the lives of people. And if you can bring some sort of renewed optimism and set your cynicism aside for a minute and try something new. I'm advocating a particular thing to try, but if you can try something new, you might discover that yes, there are things that can work, that you can do, that's accessible to you and to your partners and to your community, and and um, and give it a try. We now have success stories all over the place of people who have adopted these methods and are making a difference in their communities. One of my favorite is um, uh, President Obama's Promise Neighborhood Initiative, which was all down at the community level. And I have people now in many parts of the country have applied these methods to their community, not to their city, state, or nation, but to their community and improving quality of life in their community. So it actually does work. And so if you can discard momentarily your cynicism and frustration with past failed efforts and just give this maybe a try, I think you might be surprised. You might be
Yeah.
surprised.
And I think your story about using results-based accountability, the thinking process for your own weight loss, or no, not even weight loss, but health journey is something that is very admirable. And we all think about our personal lives, you may have a health journey, you might have a financial journey, you may have a business journey. This is a process, a thinking process that you can apply.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can apply it with your kids. If there's something that let's say you're looking at your kids' attendance rate, or you're looking at school test scores, or whatever it is you want to look at, anything that you can measure, you can actually engage your kids in thinking about, you don't have to use fancy words. What's going on here? Why are you having trouble with math? What's the problem there? And what do you think might work to make that better? And then what could we do? And let's keep those numbers in front of us and see if we can make them better over time. Um, this is stuff that elementary school kids can understand. It's not rocket science. Um,
Well, I love that, especially as we are going back to school, you know, parents, guardians. you can have a conversation with your elementary school child, with your middle school child, with your high school child, in the college, and even yourself if you're going to school. What is that number? Where was the number last year? Where do you want the number to be? The grade, So I thank you for sharing that. And I don't know whether I have a last question. Maybe we always want to add an encouragement, one key takeaway, and maybe call to action, which you've done a little bit. So as we wrap up, what is one key takeaway or encouragement for those seeking more clarity? Those feeling like I've been trying, nothing is working. I like the fact that you said put away your cynicism and renewed optimism. If you have any more to say, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, yeah. Um, one of the we've talked about the books and so forth, and that's all good. And I think there's value in having a copy of Trying Hard and the other book, um, but there's videos online, and I can give Marion a link to one in particular that I attached to all my email these days, which was a workshop I did in Ontario, in Toronto, back in 2012, and in 55 minutes you can learn RBA, um, and there's some other examples out there as well. But I'll send you the links, Marion, and you can share them with this community. So you don't have to even read the book. You can watch a video for an hour and you'll get the idea of how this works. And then depends on your willingness to give it a try.
Okay. Well, can we put our hands together, put some emojis in the chat? Mark, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insights. You've given us so much to think about, from defining success to holding ourselves accountable, getting partners, and looking at things that actually work. So for our listeners, I hope you walk away with some practical, purposeful, and potential life-changing tools. If this conversation sparked insight for you, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more thought-provoking, heart-centered content, and share it with someone who is ready to make some change with clarity and impact. So, as Mark reminded us, partnerships, visuals, putting out there, this results-based accountability can be used in governments, at work, nonprofits, your personal enterprises, and at home, even with elementary school children, to ensure that you thrive and you do well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you in the next session, which will be August 30th. We'll have Yvette Papo, who will share her life story with us. So thank you all.